Hi, I'm Shannon Symonds, and I'm the author of Book for Murder, Balefire Bay Mystery. And this is a draft of the book that I've been working on. Excuse my voice. And so I just thought it'd be fun to read the draft out loud and to post it on YouTube and get some feedback from you, hopefully. At the end of it, I'll tell you, at the end of each chapter, I'll kind of tell you what inspired that chapter. So please forgive me if it's a little choppy, because when I find an error, I stop and I mark. Chapter 9, The Researcher's Bestie. You can't butter me up. It doesn't matter how cute you are or how good your cookies are. I'd have to take you in for bribing a cop, Connor said. Ivy gave Connor a little push. You haven't tried my scotcheroos. Do you think the chief made a hasty decision about Bonnie's death? Do you really think it was an accident? I think they were all drinking a lot, and accidents happen. Well, what if it wasn't? And it gets out and it ruins Xander, Ivy asked. Well, if it wasn't an accident or suicide, we'd better hope she was the only target. I promised Xander I would play security and have permission from the chief to work the event, as long as I'm on my off-duty hours. Some of the people Bonnie was closest to are all coming back to the sanctuary and bringing their kids. I know. I get to play maid and assistant cook. It's a dry run for future events. I'm going to help Jenny and Anderson organize the cottages and work in the gathering place kitchen. You're going to love working with Jenny, Connor said. Ivy nodded, and then she had a new thought. Do you know if Bonnie had any children or a husband? I met her family as a part of the chief's investigation when I returned her personal items. She was single and had 2 kids. Her dad's raising them. He said losing her was worse because she was pregnant. Pregnant? That's awful, said Ivy, and emotive. If she was killed, it could also be a motive, but why does her death bother you? Well, I'm living in the same house she was. If she was killed, I could potentially be in danger. I live where it happened. All I know is Balefire's new to me. I mean, what do I really know about anyone? Even Xander. Plus, I'm a researcher and I'm born to dig and question things. I won't really feel safe until I put this puzzle together, label it, and share it. I thought you were a librarian. I'm a research librarian. I am a trained Harvard Law School research librarian. I researched and gathered information for professors and their students. I researched case law, and basically did what was needed for the law department. I love research and, well, I can't stand an unsolved mystery. He gave her a crooked smile. His dark eyes sparkled. So basically, you don't know if you should trust Xander, even though he's famous and loaded, and you're a nosy body who can't leave well enough alone? He chuckled. Looking sheepish, she shrugged. Sadly, you're right. I think you completely understand me. I can't deny my need to solve every mystery or problem that crosses my path. Actually, I was an amateur sleuth when I was young. What? Connor suppressed a smile and signaled and turned up the road to the sanctuary. Like Nancy Drew? That's right. I'm Jessica Fletcher. I solved a lot of cases. The case of the missing puppy, or the case of the new neighbor's grave-sized garden plot in his backyard? Grave-sized plot? She grinned. Tomatoes and sweet peas. He planned to grow them in a perfect 8 foot by 3 foot patch of freshly turned up soil. Or so he claimed. Well, now it seems you are an expert. He glanced incredulously at her before he looked vaguely out the window for a minute. It was sad. Bonnie's dad is a really big guy. He answered the door, and I asked if her husband was home. Legally, we contact husbands first if someone is married. Bonnie's dad told me that they had split up last year when she met someone else. That's really sad, Ivy said. Did you ask him if he knew who she was meeting or who the other man was? I did, but he'd only seen him a few times from a distance when she went out with him. He said he was average height, average weight, had brown hair, and everything average. He asked, but she wouldn't tell him anyone his name, so he thinks he was a married man. I came away feeling like she had something going on that was more important than her kids and father. I wondered if whoever she was seeing was at the reunion as a guest or another classmate. Did you question everyone who went to the reunion? Ivy asked. Connor nodded yes. The chief and I interviewed everyone on our list. And no one on the list knew who Bonnie was seeing? Ivy asked. He shook his head no. But during the party, I did see her slip into the trees at night with someone. But I don't believe they were having an affair. They're old friends, and were probably just catching up. Who was it? Ivy asked, trying not to look too hungry for the information. He was talking easily, and she didn't want to break the spell. I shouldn't tell you, Connor said. She sat quietly and waited. He stopped the car just short of the gate, like Xander had the first day they met. He studied her face, squinting. She looked back, hoping. His head dropped. He took a deep breath, and without looking up said, Roger. He looked up and directly into her eyes. She wanted to look away, but stayed steadily, looking back. You know Roger, Veronica's husband and Precious's dad. But before you ask, yes, her real name is Precious. He's also Xander's best bud. Besides Anderson. He's always trying to get Xander involved in some scheme or project to make a fast buck. Once he tried to get Xander to open a zip line from his property. Connor shook his head and laughed. Roger could be cheating on Veronica. It happens. He shrugged. I'm a pretty good judge of character, and I don't get that vibe from Roger. Bonnie hung with Jack for a little while, too. Who says her boyfriend was there, you know? Do you still have the list or remember the names of the people who were there that night? Ivy asked. Veronica gave me a list. Debbie Davis and Jack helped her. She brought it to me at the station the afternoon you came to town. I've talked to everyone on the list locally, and I've recorded or video chatted with everyone who lived out of the area. No one saw or heard anything except 2 people. Trying not to show her excitement, Ivy tried to act casual. Who would that be? Debbie Davis was one of them, but she has some, emotional challenges. So I don't know. What did she say? Well, this is another piece of information you can't share. Pinky promise? I'm an idiot. He rolled his eyes and suppressed another laugh while shaking his head. She leaned toward him. I will never be able to trust Xander until I know what happened. Please? He looked her in the eyes for a moment. Okay. Deb said she thought she heard Roger and Bonnie arguing in the forest near where Roger fell. But the timeline was off. And frankly, no one takes Deb too seriously. She's Veronica's shadow. If I didn't know how long they've been friends, I'd be surprised to see Veronica and Deb together. It's like Veronica takes care of her. Who was the second person that saw or heard something? Ivy asked. Roger was the second person. He didn't see anything. Roger thought he heard 2 women arguing in the woods. He only caught a few words. He heard one of them say they felt guilty. Roger thought it was probably a normal couple's argument that sounded a little angry but not lethal. Do you believe Roger and Debbie? What reason would either one of them have to make it up? Ivy asked. Well, I guess I can't think of a single reason not to trust them. But a disagreement doesn't make a motive for murder. Plenty of people have drunk drama. Sometimes the decisions people make when they're drunk impact the rest of their lives, Ivy said. Connor shrugged. Yeah, drunk driving has ended in some awful things. I've been hearing rumors of Jack and Debbie splitting up after their son John graduates. Debbie told Aggie that Jack had been drinking more than she'd ever remembered. Jenny heard them talking at the tea shop about separating after they take John on a cruise for his senior trip in June. Do you think the rumors are true? He smiled. They're married, so who knows? They could be fighting and planning a cruise at the same time. But as a sleuth, shouldn't you ask me who would stand to benefit from Bonnie's death? What's the motive? Well, that's a great question, Ivy pondered for several minutes. Maybe the boyfriend is violent and the only motive was power and control? Maybe her boyfriend's jealous wife killed her? Maybe she met someone new? There could be a million motives. Pregnancy is definitely a motive. An affair is another motive, and you can't forget money. The leather in Connor's duty belt squeaked as he adjusted it, trying to get comfortable. Do you see the problem? We need more information. Just because someone has a motive, we can't assume they killed her. Having a rock-solid motive doesn't make someone a killer. All we really know is who was at the reunion, Connor said. He rolled down the driver's side window and punched in his coat at the gate. You know all my secrets now, she shrugged. Well, I guess that makes us partners, Connor said. Minion. You're my minion, Ivy said. Sidekick? Well, okay. Ivy shrugged. Connor looked at her before he started the SUV and pulled through the gate. The people Bonnie knew best on Veronica's list includes people you've just met and are working for Xander and Anderson. Jack and Debbie Davis, Veronica Smith Allen, Roger Allen, Jenny's ex-husband Mel Ryder, and me as security. Jenny and Jessica were there. Mom brought up cinnamon rolls for breakfast the morning after. She was alone for a while making coffee and didn't see anything. Didn't people from out of town return for the reunion? Another complication. There were about 10 other couples here from out of town. Honestly, I don't think it was one of them. I interviewed them all and ruled them out when they alibied each other for the time she must have fallen. They were still embarrassed about forgetting names and going bald. Most of them didn't even remember who Bonnie Riley was. None of them had a motive. He turned off the car at Knightley House. They both sat quietly, envisioning different scenarios about Bonnie's death. Connor got out and opened her door. Some of the locals will be at the sanctuary for the dry run this weekend. Maybe I can talk to them again. Maybe now that time has passed, Debbie will tell me more about what she saw. I just hope it's less eventful than the reunion. I can't imagine how awful it was, Ivy said. I'm still wondering why you care so much, Connor said. She looked up at him. I've been wondering that myself. Besides hating loose ends. They were quiet for a moment, lost in thought. When my parents died, the last of my friends moved on with their lives. I hate the thought of something happening to her because it reminds me of me. No one would be looking for me. Bonnie deserves a full investigation, Ivy said. You have people who will look for you now. When my mother brought you home like a puppy, you became one of us. It's permanent, like a bad tattoo. They looked at each other and laughed. She gave him a hug and then turned around to see Xander standing in the doorway looking worried and hurt all at the same time. He left the door open and went back into the house. So, as a trauma survivor, and as somebody who worked with trauma survivors and has been trained to work with trauma survivors and survivors of abuse, it is really common to have a difficult time trusting somebody after somebody you loved and cared about betrays you and turns on you in a way you don't expect. We all like to say, well, she should have seen it coming, or she shouldn't have married him, and when we do that, what we're really saying is, oh my gosh, that could have been me. It's her because she drinks. It's her because she has a bad picker. It's her because, and we'll just make a list because we want to separate ourselves from the fear that, people that we know sometimes can do things that are really unexpected. So I think it's pretty normal for her to want to know what happened, especially since she's in the house and she's working with Xander. I also think it's normal for her to like Xander so much that she doesn't give up the job. So that is one comment people have said is, well, why does she care about Bonnie? I'm not sure she cares about Bonnie as much as she cares about staying alive. And she has been on alert probably for almost 2 years. There's a really great TED Talk. I'll try to find it. If anybody wants it, put a comment and I'll try to find it. About how when you have lived in an intense environment where you're at risk or at danger, it's like living in the woods knowing there's a bear in the woods. And you're always on alert. And so you might leave that woods and go to a different wood, but you take that alert with you, that hypervigilance. And so it's normal for survivors. So here's one little tidbit about this book that I think is interesting. I actually based some of the crime on a real story, a true crime that happened here out on the coast. So if you live out here, you probably already know which one I'm talking about. It was pretty infamous in our little town. If you don't, go and find it and email me, and I'll try to get you a free ebook. The first person that emails me when the book comes out, if you're a true crime buff. So thanks for listening, and please comment. Let me know what you like, what you hate. Subscribe, and thanks for helping me make this book a little better.